Hey YouTube channel, it's Patrick from Modern Talking. This is the AWS series, and in this episode we are going to learn what is the Lambda. Enjoy! Alright, let's get to the subject. As I said, we are going to talk a little about the AWS Lambda in connection with the event bridge scheduler and the secrets. Let's have a look on the sequence diagram. In the middle we can see the AWS Lambda. From there, we want to call the weather API in order to get the forecast for upcoming day. Then, under the specific conditions, we want to send an email to the client. I'd like to introduce two services more, so I will show the event bridge scheduler, which we'll be calling the Lambda. Another piece is the secret manager, but first, what is the AWS Lambda? The easiest way to define the AWS Lambda is to compare with some other existing and popular solution we might know. If you are familiar with AWS, let's consider EC2. If not, think about the self-hosted systems. In case of both, we are responsible for the infrastructure managing and scaling the solution. On the other hand, AWS Lambda is taking care about it on their own. Lambda is an event-driven functionality which is designed not to be aware all the time, meaning we have no traditional infrastructure which is serving some application by constantly listening daemon. Let's consider an example and try to understand it fully. In the AWS console, we go to the Lambda service. For the sake of this presentation, I have prepared one already, but let's try to create the new one from the scratches for now. Create new function. After basic configuration, we are going further. On this configuration step, AWS offers us a few runtimes as the environment for the function execution. .NET, Go, Java, Node.js, Python and Ruby, various versions. Let's pick a Node.js. Alright, we created the dummy Lambda. As I said, Lambda is an event-driven function, so we have function which gets an event as an argument. Plus, it doesn't require infrastructure configuration, we didn't define it, done and done. Let's try to run this Lambda. In the UI, we have two buttons available for our development purposes. But before, we need to define our test event, which is related to an execution. You can think about it the same way as about the request. Event can have a body, payload, but for this example, we keep it as is. As we're testing it, we can see Lambda has been executed and returned some response. Not impressive for a demo, so let's get back to my function I created beforehand. Let's check how the Lambda look like. As we saw before, on the sequence diagram, in this code we need to call an external weather API in order to get the forecast for a given city for our upcoming day. After that, under some condition, we are going to send the email. Let's test it. In the logs we can see Lambda worked. We have the debug logs and the email has been sent. Let's check the mailbox. We have the email. Tomorrow it will rain, don't forget the umbrella. In the code, there are a few elements I would like to discuss. The forecast we need to get for a given city. As I said before, Lambda is being invoked with the event. Event as the request can have a body. We saw the payload in the test event configuration. I use it as the place to define the city in the context. The second thing what to mention is API key here. API key as the value which shouldn't be persisted in the Lambda or repository needs to be stored somewhere. Usually we keep those things in the configuration, environment variables or so. How to handle it in the Lambda? Let's have a look at the API key provider. It's a class which utilizes generic secrets provider. Secrets provider is getting the entries from the mysterious AWS service Secrets Manager. Secrets Manager is a service that allows us to store the secret values such as passwords, key certificates in the safe way. You can define such values in the Secrets Manager and you are able to retrieve them in the Lambda or any other AWS service. After the secret creation, AWS provides us the scratches to use in the projects. We have the codes available for the various of languages which we can use in the Lambda. But what if we want to do something more? We get back to our function. As you can see, we are doing quite non-standard things. We are calling the REST endpoint, sending the email. How it's possible? We don't have the node modules directory. We could create the new file, put the JavaScript library here, but Lambda allows us to achieve the same thing in more mature way, layers. Layers are the zip archive which holds data, configuration, custom runtime or reusable code. In this example, I used it in order to add the libraries Axios and NodeMailer. What would happen if we remove one of them? Let's remove Axios layer, saving and testing. Yeah, it failed because cannot locate the axis module. Going back to layers, let's add the new entry. We can use the predefined layer, but let's create the new one. Layer can be uploaded by the zip file or the Amazon S3. Let's use the zip for now. I've prepared the zip files beforehand. Let's pick the Axios upload, declare the architecture and the runtime. Let's add it into the Lambda. Go back, add the newly created layer. After this change, we should be able to run the Lambda successfully. We have the success. Check the email. Yeah, we have the email. Alright, we have the function which can be called by hand. But how to execute it periodically? We will use the event bridge scheduler for this purpose. Schedules allows us to declare the cron job or the rate-based tasks. Let's create the cron job task. Every 0th second, 7 o'clock, every day of the month, every month, and a day of the week, every year, we will call some action. AWS shows us the upcoming 10 schedules entries in order to confirm our cron job pattern. We can configure the flexible time window. If we would like to add the margin to the call, for instance, in order to not to make the DOS attack to our Lambda, we can define the window. In the 30 minutes from the defined time, the task will be called. But for our tests, let's turn it off. Going further, we define the target. As we want to call the Lambda with this cron job task, let's locate the AWS Lambda in there. We pick our target function, define the event payload. As we showed it before, we need to pass the city here. As the last step, we confirm whole configuration and creating the new schedules entry. We just created the periodically action which is going to call the Lambda with the defined event. Alright, we did learn what is the AWS Lambda. We configured the function connected with the secrets manager in order to store the keys and password in the safe way. We configured the event bridge scheduler in order to call the Lambda daily. Let's talk a little about the two most important advantages of using the AWS Lambda. The first one is that using Lambda, we pay only for our execution. It's totally opposite of the AC2 or the self-hosted solution, which is fully paid for the idle time when no calculations are being made. The another cool thing is that we don't need to scale Lambda. If the traffic of the event is big, AWS will handle all of it and will take care of the proper handling of the events. That's it for this episode. Let me know if you are using the AWS Lambda in your projects already. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button because I'm going to publish every week. Take care.